2 weeks later. Do we really have to go? Lilangulu asked his father as he got into their car. Yes, we must. If His Excellency Adolf doesn't witness sufficient attendance at the event, our lives will become even more challenging. January, Lilangulu's father replied as he ignited the car's engine and departed from the garage, commencing their journey. As their car traversed the streets of Edenia, the capital city of Eden, they observed the glistening roads that had been diligently cleaned throughout the preceding week in preparation for that day. They have completely eradicated any remnants of destruction and littering that resulted from the protests following the arrests, Lilangulu said. This time, I had hoped that the protests would continue until their release, or perhaps His Excellency would postpone the festivities for another week, but the serenity and cleanliness of the streets convey a different message, thanks to their presence, January said, pointing towards the soldiers patrolling the streets. I've heard that over 20,000 soldiers have been mobilized, with 8,000 of them stationed in Edenia. They have been patrolling the city for the past 3 weeks, ensuring everyone behaves, Lilangulu commented, his use of the term, His Excellency, tinged with mockery. Do you think he would cancel the parade? Not even a nuclear war would make that happen. His father chose to ignore Lilangulu's mocking tone, recognizing that they shared similar sentiments. Instead, he simply stated, however, there seems to be a distinctiveness to their mobilization this time. What is it? I don't see anything different. They're just soldiers doing the opposite of what they're supposed to do, Lilangulu asked, seeking clarification. Usually, when the military is mobilized to handle protests, there are reports of deaths resulting from the violence inflicted by the soldiers. However, for the past 3 weeks, there has been no news of deaths at all. Instead, there have been reports of mass arrests only. Surprisingly, those who were released stated that they did not face the usual torture during their detention, despite the poor conditions of the holding facilities, January explained. I believe it's due to today's celebration, Lilangulu interjected, pausing briefly before continuing. Perhaps he wants to avoid being the sole high-ranking participant on his own celebration day. What do you mean by that? His father asked. I mean, the protests themselves have already caused a significant decrease in the number of international guests attending the event. Now, imagine if deaths were reported amid these cancellations. The remaining guests might cancel their attendance as well to avoid further scrutiny and backlash on their own sides, Lilangulu elaborated, providing a detailed explanation. The conversation between father and son persisted as they reached their destination. After parking the car, they alighted and started walking towards the main street, where the celebration and parade were scheduled to take place 3 hours later. 3 hours later, luxury cars, heavily guarded and adorned with opulence, began to arrive one by one, carrying international guests to the venue. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Mr. Sergei Lavrov, arrived, followed by the Chinese Minister Wang Yi, Cuban Minister Bruno Rodriguez Parilla, Belarusian Minister Vladimir Mackay, Venezuelan Minister Elias Jaua, North Korean Minister Ri Su-yong, and numerous other dignitaries. Each guest was promptly guided to their assigned seats on the magnificent and extravagant stage. 5 minutes later, a convoy of luxurious and armored cars arrived, coming to a halt. 2 individuals emerged from the most extravagant car, impeccably dressed in suits, opening the door for Adolf to step out. As he emerged, his fervent supporters erupted into ecstatic cheers, prompting him to wave to them as he made his way towards the stage. Despite having met all of the guests during the previous week, Adolf greeted them as if it were their first encounter. After exchanging pleasantries, he returned to his seat. As he took his place, a synchronized firing of cannons resonated, marking the commencement of the ceremonies. The flag bearers started their march towards the flagpole, arriving precisely at the 43rd shot, symbolizing the dictator's age. With the flag securely fastened to the pole, everyone in attendance stood as the military band initiated the national anthem. The soldiers stationed at the pole began to hoist the flag, synchronizing the pace so that it would reach the top precisely as the anthem drew to its conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed citizens, loyal followers, and esteemed guests, Adolf began his speech immediately after the national anthem concluded and the applause subsided. Today, as I stand before you, I am overwhelmed with profound pride and gratitude for the unwavering support you have bestowed upon me and our illustrious nation. Together, we have conquered adversities, fortified our determination, and paved the way towards a resplendent future. His speech persisted for half an hour, weaving a tapestry of promises, achievements, and aspirations. His words gracefully floated in the air, casting a potent spell that stirred the hearts and minds of his devoted subjects. As soon as the speech concluded, the conductor's baton descended, setting the musicians in motion. The band filled the air with a symphony of harmonious melodies, captivating the audience's senses. Simultaneously, a distant rumble grew gradually louder, capturing everyone's attention. All eyes turned skyward to witness a breathtaking spectacle. The fighter jets of the Air Force soared above, their graceful maneuvers leaving trails of vibrant colors behind, accentuating the azure backdrop. Helicopters whirled elegantly in the air, adding to the awe-inspiring display. When the air show concluded, and without a moment's pause, Air Force General Christopher Hartman bellowed, "March!" Instantly, the soldiers standing at attention began their synchronized march, their disciplined steps resonating with precision and strength. Arrayed in immaculate uniforms, each soldier brandished their weapons. Keen observers would notice a meticulous detail: the gleaming shine of these arms as if they were newly unboxed for this momentous parade. In the wake of the marching soldiers, the air resonated with the growl of engines as a formidable convoy of tanks and armored vehicles rumbled through the streets. The parade continued its majestic procession, weaving its way through the heart of the city. Flags fluttered in the gentle breeze, while cheers erupted from some enthusiastic onlookers, adding to the atmosphere of grandeur. As the final tank rumbled past, the dictator Adolf stood atop the platform, a glint of contentment in his eyes. He delivered his closing remarks, bidding farewell to the jubilant crowd before descending from the stage. With the ceremony coming to an end, he made his way towards his awaiting car, intending to depart for his presidential palace. Amidst the commotion and amidst the supporters' cheers, an unexpected sound pierced the air. Bang! A shot was fired, its trajectory ricocheting and striking a guard who had been dutifully holding the car door for Adolf. Reacting swiftly, the remaining guards sprang into action. Without hesitation, they grasped Adolf by the neck, forcefully guiding him into the car as they surrounded him before shutting the door behind him. Wasting no time, the car started moving the moment the door was closed. The situation mirrored itself for the other foreign ministers as they, too, were hastily ushered into their cars. Without concern for those in their path, the vehicles accelerated forward, each diplomat racing in a vibe of to each their own. While the diplomats' cars raced and vied against one another on their way to the airport, their respective security teams that were stationed at the airport adopted a contrasting approach. Instead of engaging in a competition, they chose to collaborate. In a remarkably efficient display of coordination, the security teams swiftly assumed control of the airport, seamlessly surpassing the airport security personnel. They skillfully secured the perimeter, while maintaining a vigilant watch over the surroundings as they waited for their respective ministers. After a 20-minute wait, the first minister's car arrived at the airport, swiftly followed by the other diplomat's vehicle. Without any delay, the security teams sprang into action, rushing towards their own diplomats' cars. Swiftly opening the doors and forming a protective shield around the diplomats, covering them with their jackets and ballistic shields. Wasting no time, they began moving towards their respective planes, which were already powered on and ready for departure, only waiting for their passengers. Once on board, the planes swiftly initiated their departure procedures and began moving towards the runway. The runway, devoid of any other aircraft, bore testament to the temporary control exerted by the short-term security team. Having taken charge of the airport, they had also assumed control of the air traffic operations. They postponed all scheduled takeoffs, ensuring that no aircraft was on the runway during this critical period. Additionally, incoming planes were directed to enter a holding pattern, circling in the air until they received clearance for landing. One after another, the planes began to take off. The only factor causing a delay between their takeoff was the required distance to avoid wake turbulence. Inside one of the departed planes. Report, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs, exclaimed once the airplane had taken off and he was certain of his safety. Coup d'état, sir. The city is in turmoil, so we don't know who is behind it yet, answered one of his guards. Why didn't we have any prior knowledge of this? Are our assets in the country just playing around? Sergei asked, his anger evident as he found himself at ground zero when it all began. There was no indication whatsoever, but whoever he is powerful, the guard answered. What makes you say that? If he is powerful, he would have chosen another day, not today where there are almost 10,000 guards in the city. Did you contact Moscow to inform them about the situation? Sergei answered back. We attempted, but no communication can go out or come inside, the guard reported back. What do you mean by that? You were able to coordinate operations between the security team with me and those at the airport. How is it possible that you failed to establish contact with Moscow? Sergei asked in surprise. It appears that those responsible for this coup deliberately left our frequencies open to facilitate our safe evacuation but intentionally blocked outside communication to prevent our countries from learning about the coup and potentially sending assistance to Adolf, the guard explained. Shit, they are cunning and powerful, Sergei exclaimed as he came to the realization that those orchestrating the coup were aware of their encrypted frequencies yet deliberately left them open to facilitate their escape. Furthermore, they possessed highly advanced technology capable of blocking all forms of communication from leaving the country. It's a complete communication isolation. Even we wouldn't be able to achieve such a feat on such short notice, he added. Aaron, who was watching the parade from within a real-world synchronized time bubble in the Universal simulation said, if you were unaware of the military's inherent weakness, you would assume they were of world-class caliber. All those weapons originate from Adolf's private Foss's warehouse, and they will be promptly reclaimed and returned to them. As for the cars appearing brand new, their impeccable condition can be attributed to a skillful paint job. Nova, as always sitting near Aaron, answered immediately. Observing the situation, Aaron asked, is everything proceeding according to plan? Nova reported, yes, everything is in place. And with a majority of the private Foss's weapons in the hands of the soldiers participating in the parade, dealing with the private forces will be easier than anticipated. At the moment we are simply waiting for the first shot to be fired before I issue the order to everyone, signaling them to make their move. As they kept their eyes fixed on the unfolding events, they remained watchful until the parade eventually concluded. The pivotal moment arrived when Adolf stood up and commenced his walk towards his car. Aaron, seeing this, his voice tinged with anxiety, he said, it appears that the awaited time has arrived. Nova reassured Aaron, sensing his unease, by saying, you invested ample time in planning every detail with me, so don't fret about any potential mishaps. If your forces face difficulties, remember that you are fully capable of taking matters into your own hands. Thanks, Aaron managed to say, but before he could finish his sentence, a gunshot resounded from the screen displaying the parade. Aaron exclaimed, finally. With prior knowledge of the imminent events, Nova, who had made thorough preparations and already gained control over the uplink facility responsible for broadcasting the parade's video feed to the international audience, initiated the transmission of an alternative feed. This feed, meticulously simulated and rendered, aimed to deceive international viewers, leaving them completely unaware of the unfolding situation. Simultaneously, Nova utilized her control over Kinect to start monitoring all internet activity, intercepting any information that had the potential to inform the world about the ongoing coup. Furthermore, she employed the radio signal transmission towers to jam all radio communications, whether encrypted or not, except for those utilized by the evacuating foreign ministers heading to the airport. By doing so, Nova aimed to facilitate their coordinated escape while mitigating the risk of attracting unwanted attention and potential backlash from the international community if they were detained. Leveraging the communication infrastructure, she orchestrated the synchronized efforts of the coup forces, ensuring strategic cohesion and efficient execution of their planned actions. While doing all of those, she was also harnessing the sensors embedded in the personal devices of all citizens, online connected cameras, and any accessible sensors within the country, employing this vast network to create a digital replica of the nation. By continuously updating and redesigning the plan based on the reactions of Adolf and his forces, Nova rendered any countermeasures they devised obsolete the moment she became aware of them. This adaptive approach allowed her to maintain a strategic advantage, constantly staying ahead of the opposition and adjusting the coup strategy accordingly. The streets in which the parade took place. As soon as Lilangulu and his father heard the gunshot and witnessed the security team swiftly escorting Adolf and the other visitors away, they wasted no time. They swiftly joined the multitude of frantic individuals, all attempting to escape the scene, and hurried towards where they had parked their cars. Their primary objective was to reach their vehicle and return home before something terrible happened to them. Amid the frenzy, people resorted to pulling and stomping on one another in their desperate attempt to ensure their own survival. Some even went to the extent of pushing their slower-running partners aside, prioritizing their own well-being. As time elapsed, the chaos intensified with nobody present to restore order, causing the situation to spiral further out of control. When Lilangulu and his father finally reached their parked car, their clothes were tattered from grappling with others who were trying to shove them aside in their haste to run ahead. Without wasting a moment, they immediately boarded the vehicle, casting aside any sense of etiquette or rules. January accelerated with a sense of urgency, driving as if there were no tomorrow. What the? January couldn't help but utter those words in astonishment as he was compelled to stop. The road ahead was congested with military trucks overflowing with heavily armed soldiers, all moving in the same direction. Where are they going? Lilangulu asked his father, his voice trembling in fear and a slight tinge of sadness evident as he realized he had lost his bag amidst the commotion. They are heading towards His Excellency's Private Forces headquarters, January replied to his son. Lilangulu, perplexed by the situation, further asked, why aren't they attempting to restore order and quell the chaos? Before his father could answer, a military truck equipped with a loudspeaker began broadcasting an official announcement, capturing their attention. Attention, citizens of Adenia. This is an official announcement from the military, the voice echoed through the speaker. Due to the current circumstances and in the interest of public safety, a curfew is being implemented across the entire city. This curfew will take immediate effect and will remain in place until further notice. We kindly request that you return to your homes immediately and remain there until further instructions. Anyone found outside their residence 1 hour from now, unless en route to their homes due to distance, will be subject to arrest. They have begun enforcing it, January replied to his son, his voice filled with concern, as the distant sound of the announcement grew fainter. In a hushed tone, almost ensuring that his son wouldn't hear, he quietly muttered, I hope it will be resolved by tomorrow, his words carrying a hint of worry, as he knew or suspected what was unfolding. Back to the site of the parade. Moments after the onset of chaos, the soldiers who had taken part in the parade received the order to board the military trucks that had transported them there, along with their weapons. Wondering why they were not ordered to control the chaotic public, the soldiers boarded the trucks only to find boxes filled with magazines inside. Their surprise grew when they received another order. Within those trucks, you will find boxes containing magazines. Load your weapons with them immediately. Following the command, the soldiers swiftly loaded their weapons with the ammunition from the magazines as the trucks began moving in a synchronized convoy, transporting the armed soldiers to various locations throughout the city. During the journey, the soldiers received detailed briefings from their commanders regarding their objectives upon arrival. These commanders had been previously informed and briefed on the plan weeks ago, actively participating in its development. Some of the soldiers who were quick-witted immediately grasped the unfolding situation, while others who were slower to comprehend took a bit longer to realize the true nature of the plan. However, regardless of their individual understanding, no one made an attempt to stop or resist. The prevailing sentiment among the soldiers was a collective weariness of being continuously regarded as second-rate military personnel compared to the dictator's private forces. This shared frustration among the soldiers served as a catalyst, igniting a common purpose and driving their collective agreement to the orders. Let's go, exclaimed some of the soldiers, their faces displaying a mix of excitement and contentment as they welcomed the unfolding events. However, alongside their happiness, there were also traces of apprehension and fear lingering within them for the face-off that was about to happen. In addition to Adenia, other major cities within Eden, including Oasisville, Blissfield, Astoria, Avalon, and several others, were engulfed in chaos. However, this turmoil did not stem from the gunshot incident, rather, it was the direct consequence of Alexander's call to action. The protesters had already begun their demonstrations earlier in the day, but it was upon receiving news of the incident that Alexander issued the order for their actions to become more aggressive. As soon as they received the order, the protest leaders in those cities immediately directed the groups towards government offices. This decision instilled fear in some of the protesters who were aware that soldiers were stationed at these locations and would respond with violence to disperse them. Despite this knowledge, and with a sheep-like mentality, they continued to follow the directives of their leaders. Upon reaching the government buildings, they were taken aback to find all the soldiers had vanished, leaving no one to impede their progress. Encouraged by this unexpected turn of events, the protest leaders forged ahead, and their followers grew increasingly emboldened. As they advanced towards the government building, they began wreaking havoc and vandalizing government properties along the way. With each act of property destruction, their audacity swelled further. When they finally reached the government building, guided by the leader's influence, they forcefully kicked down the barricades and stormed inside, swiftly taking control. Fueled by their pent-up anger stemming from the experiences under Adolf and his family's leadership, they unleashed their wrath by vandalizing and demolishing the properties within the buildings. "Testing, 1, 2, 3, exclaimed a soldier gripping a microphone inside a truck brimming with speakers, completely disregarding the perilous circumstances surrounding him. His sole focus remained on ensuring the seamless operation of the system. A glance at the surroundings would reveal a staggering sight. Over 4,000 soldiers encircled the headquarters of the dictator's private forces, locked in a tense standoff with the ill-equipped private forces. The majority of their state-of-the-art technological equipment was loaned to the soldiers for the parade, aiming to demonstrate to the world their possession of cutting-edge weaponry. As a result, they found themselves outgunned by the military they were constantly compared to and believed to surpass. Caught completely off guard, they remained oblivious to the fact that Adolf had been attacked. Unbeknownst to them, Nova intercepted the communication intended for their awareness, providing Adolf with a false sense of security by assuring him that they were en route to protect him. Having completed the microphone test, the soldier proceeded to deliver the mandated announcement: "You are encircled entirely. Surrender immediately, or you will be compelled to do so at the cost of substantial casualties." His voice remained utterly composed, devoid of any hint of emotion. "You guys know who is backing us, right? Are you still determined to persist with this?" A response echoed from the megaphone held by an individual within the building. "It appears you have made your choices. We will not entertain surrender for the next 30 minutes, the soldier retorted in response to their reply. He then grasped his radio, contacting the command center and reporting, "Sir, they have declined our offer. Instruct the soldiers to withdraw by 500 meters, came the response from the other side of the radio. "Yes, sir," acknowledged the soldier promptly. He immediately relayed the command to all the soldiers, instructing them to withdraw by 600 meters, including an additional 100 meters for good measure. Inside the building. "Looks like our threat worked," said one of the members of the private forces when he saw soldiers moving away from the building. "I really hope so. We're short on weapons since they took them for the parade, and I hope they don't know that. Otherwise, they'll hold on until our weapon barrels melt from overuse before they catch or kill us." But what did they mean by not accepting surrender for the next half an hour if they were going to leave us? He asked, his eyes still fixed on the window as he observed the soldiers continuing to move until they finally came to a stop far away from the building. Qua. Before anyone could answer him, they heard an extremely loud sound, and in unison, they all exclaimed, "Fuck," as they immediately began scrambling towards the basement of the building. The pilots of the two approaching fighter jets, paying no attention to the activities of the people in the building, pulled their joysticks upward, causing their planes to ascend in altitude. They continued to climb, losing forward momentum and instead gaining vertical speed. Eventually, they ceased moving forward entirely and continued ascending. After reaching a certain altitude, they disengaged the afterburners and let the planes continue climbing upward until they completely lost momentum. As the planes started to descend, their trajectory led them directly beneath the building. As the planes descended towards the building, the need for guided munition which the country didn't have disappeared. Without hesitation, they uttered, "Bombs away," and pressed the trigger, releasing all the bombs attached to the hard points of their planes. The bombs plummeted towards the target, relinquishing control to gravity for their final delivery. Following the release, the pilots pulled their joysticks to level the planes and turned back in the direction they came from, making their way back to the base. While the maneuvers executed by the planes appeared impressive, There was nothing remotely cool about the situation for those in the path of the oncoming bombs, as they desperately raced towards the basement, which had been reinforced to withstand the impact of bombings. Unfortunately, the time it took for the pilot to execute their maneuvers and release the payload was merely a few seconds, leaving those in the vicinity with insufficient time to flee and reach the safety of the basement before the devastating payload reached them. Boom, boom, boom. The bombs, arriving with staggered microseconds between them, began detonating one after another. The building was engulfed in a series of devastating explosions, annihilating everything caught within their destructive force and leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. In the aftermath of the bombings, the wreckage revealed a gruesome sight. Limbs and other body parts were scattered throughout the area, their presence a stark reminder of the devastating impact caused by one of the bombs exploding in a densely populated location. Shouts of agony and pain echoed through the air as those who had lost limbs in the explosions cried out in anguish. Shit. The soldiers stationed 600 meters away from the building couldn't tear their eyes away from the scene of destruction. They were witnesses to an act of sheer wizardry, as the pilots arrived, executed their maneuvers, dropped their payload, and departed without sparing a glance at the devastation they had wrought. True to their word, the soldiers patiently waited until the exact 30-minute mark had elapsed since their promise before they received the order to advance and apprehend all those who chose to surrender. However, for those who refused to surrender, they were granted permission to engage them with force, allowing a more aggressive approach. In successive batches, the soldiers began entering the compound, their focus at its peak. The bombing eliminated any possibility of a resolution without one side surrendering. What the heck happened? Who fired the shot? Adolf asked once he had regained his composure after arriving at his palace and receiving confirmation of his safety. We are still investigating, sir, but it will take a considerable amount of time to identify the person responsible. The shot caused a state of chaos, and everyone scattered in different directions, making it challenging to locate the individual. We will need to thoroughly review the available footage to uncover the perpetrator, his secretary reported, addressing Adolf's question. Now that you mention it, what happened to the foreign ministers? Adolf inquired, suddenly remembering their presence. Disregarding his own country's minister, he expressed little concern for their fate, knowing he could easily replace them if necessary. When the incident occurred, the foreign ministers were swiftly escorted to their car and immediately taken to the airport. They left behind a few of their guards who couldn't board the plane with them, as they needed to ensure the safety of the airport until their departure. As of now, only some of their security guards remain, and they are scheduled to leave tomorrow once the planes are dispatched to pick them up, his assistant informed him, relaying the information received during the call inquiring about the situation. Shit. Did you apologize to them for the commotion and promise to provide further details once we finish investigating? Adolf asked anxiously, his tone betraying his concern about potentially losing their support. Yes, sir. I did apologize to them, and although they were hesitant, they reluctantly agreed, the secretary replied. Fuck. Call all the generals here right now. I need to ask them how the hell someone managed to bring a gun into a city with over 8,000 fucking soldiers. Adolf shouted, attempting to channel his anxiety into anger and searching for someone to blame and punish, hoping to appease his own frustrations. Completely oblivious to what was happening in his country, all completely thanks to Nova having complete control over all communication channels within the country. She exercised her authority by manipulating and filtering the information disseminated to the public, ensuring that Adolf remained oblivious to the ongoing events. Furthermore, Nova strategically positioned soldiers along all roads leading to the palace, instructing them to block any incoming traffic to prevent individuals who were aware of the situation from reaching Adolf and informing him of the external circumstances. Yes, sir, the secretary acknowledged, promptly leaving the office to fulfill the order of summoning the generals. Receiving the calls, the generals swiftly arrived at the palace, rushing to gather in the room. Adolf wasted no time in expressing his frustration, shouting at them the moment they entered. What the fuck is going on with your soldiers? Adolf exclaimed, his voice filled with anger and impatience. Most of our soldiers were deployed to ensure there were no other protests or disturbances occurring, which led to the security at the parade location being understaffed, General Christopher responded, attempting to convey a sense of concern about his position in the midst of the situation. Do you realize that due to your negligent oversight, you have caused this day to end disastrously and put our diplomatic connections with friendly countries at risk? Adolf yelled, his anger and frustration unabated. The generals maintained their silence in the face of Adolf's outburst, choosing not to engage or respond to his tantrum. They listened attentively, their expressions stoic while absorbing his words and allowing him to vent his frustrations. Now, go find and bring the person who fired the gun here. I'm going to skin them alive, Adolf shouted in a rage, turning his back on the generals as a sign that he wished to be left alone. No, we are going to stay here, General Nathan declared, rising from his chair. Adolf abruptly turned around while saying, "What the fuck do?" But the rest of his words froze in his throat as he completed the turn. He stiffened, his eyes widening in shock, as he found himself face to face with a Glock pistol pointed directly at him. As I said, we are going to stay here, Nathan reiterated, maintaining a firm grip on the Glock. He gestured for Adolf to take a seat, emphasizing his demand with a steely gaze. "What are you doing?" Adolf asked, his voice trembling with panic. The fear in his voice was palpable as he questioned the intentions of the generals. "Someone has ordered us to keep a close watch on you until their plans are complete, after which they will personally visit to have a talk with you," General Ethan responded, a sinister smile forming on his face. "Who is that person?" Adolf inquired, his mind racing to determine if he had unknowingly angered a powerful individual. "You will find out when you meet him, so sit down or I'll make you," Nathan threatened Adolf, his tone laced with authority. "Shit," Adolf muttered, his body trembling as he reluctantly took a seat. He realized that regardless of what had done, he was in for a long and troubling night. Eden. Gradually, one after another, governmental buildings and other strategic locations fell into the hands of the protesters, while in the capital city, the military continued to assert control. As the night unfolded, the chaos intensified further, fueled by the growing awareness of government institutions being taken over in cities across the country. News of these developments spread rapidly, inspiring more and more people to take to the streets and join their fellow citizens in solidarity. Not everything went smoothly for the members of the revolutionary group attempting to seize control of government buildings. Despite being an unpopular leader, there were still some individuals who held favorable views of him. This could be attributed to those who had directly benefited from his policies or enjoyed preferential treatment, often due to having family members employed within the government and benefiting from their association. These loyalists posed a challenge to the revolutionary group's efforts as they tried to defend the status quo and resisted the calls for change. As a consequence, large-scale clashes erupted between these opposing groups in numerous cities, leading to a significant number of casualties. In response, Nova issued a directive for a portion of the military deployed in those areas to assume operational control over the police forces to effectively manage the situation and minimize the number of casualties resulting from the ongoing clashes. By 10 o'clock at night, Adolf's government had completely lost control over the country, yet the majority of the world remained unaware of the situation unfolding within its borders. Why is it so quiet? At the very least, America should have already discovered what is going on through their satellites, as they should be monitoring the parade for intelligence, Aaron asked Nova, expressing his confusion. Either the timing of the shot being fired happened at the same time when the satellites they were using to monitor and collect intelligence lost line of sight due to their orbit, and when the line of sight was restored, they only saw the chaos that had already ensued. Alternatively, they might have discovered the ongoing coup, but since they are not sure if it will succeed or not, they are keeping it under wraps, Nova explained to Aaron. That makes sense. So, where do we stand with our plan? He asked. Almost everything is about to be completed. I think you should start heading to the presidential palace now so that by the time you arrive, everything else will have been completed, and dealing with Adolf will be the only task remaining, Nova said to Aaron. Sure, see you later, Aaron said and logged out of the universal simulation. Aaron removed his virtual reality helmet and took a moment to stretch his body, feeling relief from sitting for an extended period. Let's go, he said to John, as he opened the door and stepped out of the military truck. He carried the VR helmet in his hands as they prepared to proceed. After disembarking from the truck, Aaron began walking towards the presidential palace, which was approximately a kilometer away and visible to the naked eye. As he walked, An Eden soldier who had been assigned to lead a team and entrusted with driving and protecting Aaron turned to him. The soldier saluted Aaron with the utmost respect he could afford and said, "Have a nice day, sir." "Yeah, you too," Aaron replied, waving at the soldier, before continuing his walk towards the palace alongside John. Throughout the coup, John remained by Aaron's side, using the phone provided to him to stay updated with Nova's continuous updates. The information included details about the operations carried out by Ares members in taking over several minor, yet heavily armed, private force bases scattered across Edenia. Instead of resorting to bombing these bases, which would have been excessive, the planes were reserved for targeting the main base, making it easier for the soldiers to seize control, considering Ares was still short on manpower. His walk continued until he reached a distance of about 300 meters, at which point Aaron cast the concealment rune on both himself and John. They continued walking, passing through the gates guarded by unsuspecting sentries who remained unaware of the ongoing coup happening across the country, diligently carrying out their duties. Without pausing, Aaron and John strode towards the building, their steps unwavering. Once inside, they maintained their determined pace, heading directly towards the room where Adolf and the general were present, not showing that it was their first visit to the premises. Aaron cancelled the concealment rune on both himself and John before knocking on the door. After a brief pause, General Ethan cautiously opened the door to see who was outside. As he recognized Aaron, he immediately greeted him with respect, saying, "Welcome, sir," while offering a slight bow as a sign of deference. Aaron and John entered the office without uttering a word. Ethan promptly closed the door behind them as they stepped into the room. "Hello," Aaron greeted Adolf with a wave, his eyes briefly glancing at Nathan, who still had his gun trained on Adolf. "Who are you?" Adolf asked, his fear still apparent but slightly reduced. "I've come to convince you to hand over the country and make a public announcement of it," Aaron said calmly as he took a seat on the sofa, which Christopher had vacated for him. Adolf, upon hearing Aaron's words, burst into uncontrollable laughter. Observing Adolf's reaction, Aaron turned to Nathan and asked, "Did you do something to him, or has he gone crazy from fear or something? Looks like I have the upper hand here. As long as I don't make the announcement, my private forces will eventually realize that something is amiss and come looking for me," he said amidst his laughter, before calming down and continuing, "Here's a simple offer from me. I'll give you 24 hours to run if you leave me alone. After that, I will search for you, and when I find you, I will personally be responsible for skinning you alive." Adolf concealed his anxiety and acted serious in the hope that the longer he delays them the more the chance his private forces would notice his absence and take action. Hearing what he said, Aaron and the generals couldn't help but burst into laughter, finding Adolf's threats and attempts to intimidate them amusing. Adolf, bewildered by their reaction, asked, "You think I'm joking?" However, his question was interrupted as he saw Aaron standing up and approaching him. Nervously, Adolf exclaimed, "What are you going to do with that helmet? Are you trying to hit me with it? I'm warning you, stop, stop." His voice grew more panicked as Aaron drew closer. "Reasoning with you is going to take too long," Aaron replied calmly. "Torturing you would make it difficult for you to deliver a speech shortly after. While I could create a CGI version of you, it would require eliminating everyone in this building to conceal it. So let's make it easy for both of us." With those words, Aaron forcefully placed the headgear onto Adolf's head. 5 minutes later, Aaron removed the headgear and asked, "Are you going to make the announcement, or should I send you for another round?" He shook the headgear in his hand, indicating that he was prepared to use it again if needed. Wait, no, no, I'll do anything you ask, just don't put that thing on me again, please," Adolf pleaded, dropping to his knees in fear. He was terrified at the thought of having the headgear placed on his head once more to return to that place. What on earth did she do to him? Aaron tilted his head in curiosity, wondering what Nova had done to Adolf in the universal simulation. "Okay, here's the speech that you're going to make," Aaron said, handing Adolf a piece of paper containing the speech from his pocket. "But first, call your secretary and instruct her to allow the military entry to the palace for them to increase the security in this place, citing your concerns about potential threats, understand?" "Yes, sir, I will do so." Adolf wasted no time. He walked to his desk, picked up the phone, and immediately ordered his secretary to allow the military entry and increase the security of the palace upon their arrival. Although his secretary questioned Adolf's decision to call for the military instead of his private forces, nothing a yelling or two from Adolf couldn't solve. 2 hours later, at the stroke of midnight, everything came to a sudden halt. As the new day dawned, the restless citizens, who had been in a state of chaos, found themselves compelled to pause as every news channel began airing the same broadcast. While this captured the attention of those who had their televisions on, the remaining citizens were intrigued by the simultaneous message they received. As they unlocked their phones, they were greeted with a headline reading, "Presidential Announcement," along with a link to the broadcast. As a result, the entire nation fell into a temporary hush, as curiosity enveloped everyone regarding what Adolf was about to reveal. Would he issue threats, compelling them to return home, or would he offer concessions and pledge to alter the country's policies? The anticipation hung in the air, leaving the populace on edge, awaiting the impending announcement. Adolf took his place at the podium, adorned with his presidential insignia, in a room bathed in a backdrop of vibrant blue. Amidst the static ambiance, he stood as the sole figure that stood out, embodying a stark contrast against the stillness of his surroundings. MHH. Adolf cleared his throat before he began speaking. "Dear citizens, I address you today with a heavy heart, burdened by the realization that the moment has arrived for me to let go of my hold on our beloved nation, Eden." As he uttered these words, he momentarily paused, needing to wipe away the tears that had cascaded down his face. "With profound sorrow, I announce the relinquishment of my authority over the governance of our nation. The time has come for me to pass on this responsibility to a new leadership," Adolf somberly conveyed. "Eden, our cherished land, has been a sanctuary of prosperity and harmony under my guidance. I have endeavored to lead our nation toward progress and shield our people from external perils. Regrettably, recent events have unfolded in a manner that has eroded my authority, and continuing under such circumstances would only inflict further damage and suffering. Faced with these challenges, I have engaged in dialogues with Alexander and his group, individuals who have displayed a profound commitment to the well-being of our nation. They possess a deep understanding of the complexities of governance and the requisite expertise to lead us forward. Thus, after thoughtful deliberation, I have concluded that their leadership is in the best interest of Eden and its people. The specifics of the transition and the course of action going forward will rest in the hands of Alexander and those he chooses to assist him in the process of reforming our country. Following my address, Alexander will address you, providing an overview of his plans after assuming the reins of government. Thank you, and may God bless Eden and its people," Adolf concluded, gesturing a farewell to an absent crowd before exiting the camera's view. "Is he saying what I think he's saying?" One of the protesters, momentarily ceasing the act of breaking windows at the government office, questioned in disbelief as he watched the press conference. "I believe he meant that he is dissolving the government or something of the sort, as he is entrusting the overhaul to Alexander, the only revolutionary leader who has managed to evade arrest," one of them responded, trying to interpret the implications of Adolf's announcement. "But why would he do that? Unless he has lost his sanity, he is not someone who would make such a decision." "Are you oblivious or simply ignorant?" exclaimed another protester, frustrated by the lack of understanding. "I'm almost certain a coup has occurred, and Adolf was coerced into making that announcement. Let's hear what Alexander has to say." They watched intently as Alexander ascended the podium, eager to gain some clarity and insight into the unfolding events, realizing their limited access to information as low-level members had left them in the dark about the true nature of the situation. "Citizens of Eden," Alexander commenced his speech, intentionally conveying an expression of fatigue, reflecting the weight of recent events that had unfolded prior to the press conference. "Today signifies the beginning of a new era in the annals of our nation. As my predecessor, Adolf, stated, I now assume the mantle of responsibility for our nation, a task I accept with the utmost honor," Alexander declared, pausing briefly to let the weight of his words sink in. "And as the newly appointed leader, my first imperative is to rejuvenate our ailing nation, to commence afresh. Therefore, I hereby declare the abolition of the current Constitution of Eden. But let it be clear, the abolishment of the previous government does not imply that the atrocities committed in the past will be forgotten," he declared vehemently, pounding the podium with his hands for emphasis. Beginning with the former leader of Eden, Adolf, everyone who held positions within the previous government will undergo thorough investigation and face appropriate punishment in accordance with the provisions of the new constitution. His voice resonated with a mix of weariness and unwavering determination, revealing his unwavering commitment to holding accountable those responsible for the actions of the previous regime. Tomorrow morning, I will release the remaining revolutionary leaders who have been unjustly detained, Alexander announced, his tone conveying a sense of urgency and resolve. I will engage in extensive consultations with them to ensure that the new government is structured in a manner that makes it impossible for situations like those that occurred during Adolf and his family's reign to ever transpire again. Alexander then proceeded with his speech, outlining a series of promises and commitments regarding the changes he intended to implement within the country. With each word, he sought to inspire hope and confidence in the hearts of the people. As Alexander's address neared its conclusion, he punctuated his speech by proclaiming, "Long live the revolution." With that final statement, he bid farewell to the viewers of the press conference, leaving the audience bewildered. Even though many individuals could deduce that a coup had indeed taken place, given the hints scattered throughout the speech and the concluding words that solidified their assumptions, they still struggled to grasp the intricacies behind its execution. To ensure a successful coup of Eden, it was widely understood that capturing Adolf, dismantling his private forces which constituted a significant source of his authority, and compelling him to make the announcement of his relinquishment was vital to avoid potential foreign sanctions from friendly nations would be imperative. Simultaneously, the coup plotters would need to confront the challenge posed by the military, which had been enforcing a curfew in the capital after the chaos that ensued due to the unexpected gunfire. Despite the complexities surrounding the coup and the confusion it caused, a prevailing sentiment of joy and relief permeated among most of the citizens. The removal of the dictator had rekindled hope in their hearts, and faith was restored after the dissolution of the previous government. Based on the people's reaction, Nova foresaw a discernible surge in the population to take place around 9 months later. After concluding the press conference and returning to one of the palace rooms, Alexander respectfully bowed to Aaron, expressing his heartfelt gratitude with a sincere, "Thank you very much." "This is the 15th time you've thanked me today," Aaron said, feeling a sense of embarrassment as Alexander persisted in expressing his gratitude despite his attempts to stop him. "As I mentioned earlier, I am also benefiting from this deal, so there is no need for you to feel such overwhelming thankfulness towards me." "I understand that, but I still feel the need to thank you," Alexander said, emphasizing his gratitude. "Even though I had been hoping for changes in our country since my teens and joined the revolutionary group to bring about that change, I'm convinced that nothing substantial would have occurred without your investments and the assistance you provided us." "All right, I accept your gratitude. Now, please take a seat," Aaron said, gesturing for Alexander to sit down so they could continue their conversation. As Alexander took his seat, he wasted no time and asked, "Apart from the abolition of military institutions, do you have any suggestions for the clauses in the Constitution?" He was eager to hear Aaron's opinion and see if he could accommodate any additional ideas. Aaron, deep in thought with his hand resting on his chin, took a brief moment before responding, "I do have some suggestions that can help you avoid potential pitfalls that may arise and cause problems for you in the future." "Please, go ahead," Alexander said respectfully, urging Aaron to share his suggestions. "There are too many to discuss, and it would take a considerable amount of time. Put this on, and everything will be explained to you," Aaron said, handing the VR headset to Alexander. Curiosity piqued, Alexander decided to trust Aaron's judgment and put on the peculiar-looking helmet. He resolved to ask questions later if he didn't understand the purpose behind wearing it. After putting on the headgear, Alexander settled onto the sofa. Meanwhile, Aaron left the room, finding several soldiers standing guard outside the office. After he instructed the soldiers to ensure that nobody entered the room except for himself, he embarked on a leisurely walk through the palace, fully aware that despite the time acceleration of 5 to 1, it would take Nova a considerable amount of time to thoroughly explain everything to Alexander. White House, Situation Room. After briefing him about their suspicions regarding the situation in Eden, the CIA director asked President Obama, "Sir, what course of action do you suggest we pursue?" "Firstly, how certain are you about this information?" Obama inquired about the level of confidence in the intelligence, seeking assurance before making a decision that would rely heavily on it. The CIA director responded, gesturing towards the screens displaying satellite feeds. There are two potential interpretations of the current situation. One possibility is that it signifies a coup, while the other suggests that the military is attempting to compel Adolf to disband his private forces. A few of the screens showed satellite feed of military personnel blocking the routes to the palace, and the others showed the military surrounding the headquarters of Adolf's pirate forces, providing visual evidence to support the director's explanation. Shortly thereafter, the screen displaying the soldiers encircling the private forces headquarters revealed the sudden arrival of fighter jets. In a dramatic turn of events, the jets unleashed a devastating bombardment upon the building, leaving destruction in their wake. "Seems like it's indeed a coup," remarked the CIA director, realizing that the military's decision to eliminate Adolf's private forces without attempting any negotiation indicated a complete lack of intention to engage in dialogue with him. As soon as the CIA director concluded his statement, President Obama turned to the Secretary of Defense and issued a decisive order, stating, "Instruct the Pacific Fleet to reposition one aircraft carrier group towards their location." The Secretary of Defense inquired, "Sir, are you planning to support the military in overthrowing the dictator?" "I will decide once we have a clearer picture of how the situation develops. However, we must be in proximity to effectively enforce any decision we reach." With his decision made, Obama stood up and departed the Situation Room, returning to his office to resume his duties. The Secretary of Defense selected one of the numerous phones and dialed Admiral Harry B. Harris, Jr., the commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, to relay the president's directive. Morning. The online world erupted as viewers witnessed the press conference featuring Adolf and Alexander. Speculation and humorous memes flooded social media platforms in response to the announcement. Numerous individuals engaged in speculation regarding Adolf's circumstances during his speech, pondering how he was coerced to give power. Countries that maintained amicable relations with the former dictator remained conspicuously silent throughout the ordeal. However, they did clarify that their ministers had safely returned despite the occurrence of the coup. The global response to the situation appeared relatively subdued when considering the typical scale of reactions from different countries. This was primarily due to many nations grappling with the aftermath of a recent flash crash that occurred just a month prior. As a result, they opted to adopt a watchful stance, intending to observe unfolding events before expressing their opinions on whether to acknowledge the new government or adopt a more stringent approach akin to the treatment of Taiwan. Amidst the tumultuous situation, the United States announced the dispatch of an aircraft carrier battle group to ensure a secure transition of power in the country. However, astute observers recognized this action as a veiled warning to the new leadership of Eden. It served as a clear message that the United States was closely monitoring the developments and would not hesitate to respond if Eden aligned itself with Russia or China, implying that such a choice would be met with regret. The United States found it imperative to take such measures due to their strategic positioning, with China and the rest of Asia to their northwest, the USA to their northeast, Australia to their southwest, and the American continent to their east. Eden's location held significant importance. Any nation that established a friendly relationship with Eden and managed to establish a base there would gain a substantial advantage over the other, thereby necessitating the United States' proactive approach. If China were able to establish bases in Eden, it would grant them direct access to America, resolving their predicament of having their navy confined to the Indian Ocean due to the absence of nuclear-powered submarines. With a military presence in Eden, they could also pose a threat to ships transiting through the Panama Canal, potentially exerting control over a part of the American economy through a chokehold. The same holds true for Russia. Despite their proximity to America, they would gain a new avenue of attack by utilizing long-range bombers while avoiding the heavily guarded north, where NORAD is mostly focused on. This would allow them to launch strikes on the U.S. from a different direction, necessitating a considerable amount of time and money for the United States to prepare effective countermeasures similar to those in place for the northern border shared with Canada. But they could only watch with curiosity as Eden faced the challenge of resolving this predicament. The question remained: which side would they choose to align themselves with? Eden, the presidential palace. Which side do you believe I should align with? Alexander asked Aaron, who was in the room with him. How many countries have reached out to you in an attempt to sway your decision regarding which side to align yourself with? Aaron inquired. Quite a few. The list includes countries such as America, Russia, China, Australia, the UK, France, Germany, and several others. They can all be categorized into three distinct groups. Those siding with America, followed by Russia, and then China, explained Alexander. What were their requests, and what incentives did they offer in return? Aaron inquired, seeking further details on the discussions with various countries. America and its allies had proposed financial and security assistance but requested the allocation of certain islands to establish military bases. China, on the other hand, expressed interest in building military bases as well, offering financial aid and the inclusion of Eden in the Belt and Road Initiative, a comprehensive infrastructure development program. Russia also sought islands for military bases, and in exchange, offered financial aid and assistance in locating natural resources within our economic exclusive zones. Alexander outlined the offers and requests made by different countries during the negotiations. Politely decline each one of them, explaining that to prevent international turmoil, you have chosen to maintain a neutral stance, Aaron stated. His statement prompted Alexander to frown, clearly indicating his disagreement with Aaron's suggestions. Observing Alexander's reaction, Aaron inquired, "What, do you disagree?" "Yes," Alexander replied apologetically. "Tell me the reason," Aaron said, wanting to understand Alexander's perspective. Looking at the country's current state, we truly need financial aid to rebuild and develop. Although these foreign nations are demanding excessive concessions in return, the financial assistance they offer is desperately needed at the moment. Since we are transitioning from a dictatorship, we can't even request loans without excessive leverage. However, if we negotiate with one of these countries, I believe we can remove the condition of military bases by citing citizens' disagreement, pointing at Adolf's private forces as an example. Alexander explained his reasoning. Do you believe you possess the power to negotiate with them? No, whichever country you choose, they will exploit you without limits. They will assist in a manner that turns you into a dependent nation, preventing you from rising and attempting to remove their influence from your country. And if their attempts to hinder your progress fail, they will fund and train a rebel group that will serve as their puppets, aiming to overthrow and replace you. Remember this. They offer you nothing but addictive honey. They will make you dependent to the point that whenever you face trouble, you will be forced to turn to them for help. But in exchange for their help, you will always have to sacrifice something enticing to them. Aaron said, disagreeing with Alexander's reasoning and pointing out the risk agreeing to their offer brought to Eden. Then what do you suggest we do? We are in dire need of a substantial amount of money to revive the economy, and it seems that no one other than them is willing to provide it readily, Alexander stated wearily, his tone reflecting a sense of being trapped with limited options. A smile spread across Aaron's face as he responded, "Don't worry. If your primary goal is to rebuild the economy, I can assist you with that." "How?" Alexander asked with curiosity. "All you need are investments in the country, and I can make that happen. I plan on relocating my company to this country and start injecting billions and billions into its economy. This will enable the country to uplift itself from its previous state without having to rely on another nation or compromise with them." Aaron paused for a moment before he continued. "And remember, by remaining neutral, it means that all these countries will constantly attempt to win you over to their side. They won't treat you harshly until you make a choice," Aaron reminded, emphasizing the potential advantages of maintaining a neutral stance. Even though he could compel him to do as he pleased, having someone willingly comply rather than being coerced ensures they are less likely to cause future troubles. After a brief moment of contemplation and agreeing to what Aaron had said, Alexander chose to trust Aaron once again. Recalling the first time he trusted him based on his gut feeling, and how Aaron had fulfilled his promise, Alexander decided to heed that same intuition and agreed to place his trust in Aaron once more. Another reason was that Alexander had used the peculiar helmet provided by Aaron. Considering the possibility that Aaron might establish a manufacturing plant for those devices, which Alexander was confident would be highly sought after, it meant that Aaron could generate substantial income for the country through that product alone. He also believed that Aaron had more plans up his sleeve beyond just that, which further bolstered his decision to place his trust in him. Agreeing to remain neutral presented a new predicament for Alexander. I can refuse the other two nations since they might only bring harm in the future, but how should we handle the situation with America, considering they have an aircraft carrier en route to our location? Alexander questioned, expressing his concern. For that, I have a solution, Aaron said, reaching for a phone and dialing Rena's number. Hello Aaron, Rena greeted as soon as she answered the phone call. Hello, how are you? Aaron inquired, returning the greeting. I'm doing well, how about you? Rena asked in response. I'm doing well, Aaron replied before getting straight to the point, saying, I called because I was hoping to utilize some of your family's political influence. Upon hearing what Aaron said, she smiled, happy for finally having the opportunity to reciprocate the help she had received from him. Sure, she replied. I will gladly assist you. By now, you must have heard the news about the coup that took place in Eden, right? Aaron asked. Yes, I was just reading a report about it, Rena replied and then asked, not discounting the possibility, was it you? Knowing full well that Aaron was entirely capable of such an act if he so desired. Yes, Aaron answered without hesitation, proceeding with his request as if he hadn't just confirmed his involvement in toppling the government. I want you to ensure that the aircraft carrier returns without taking any action upon its arrival. Rena, taken aback by Aaron's response, was momentarily stunned, causing her to forget to reply. Aaron, noticing her silence, asked, Can you do it? In an effort to snap her out of her frozen state and bring her attention back to the phone call. Sorry about that. I was just taken aback by your confession, Rena apologized for her momentary lapse in response. Don't worry about it. I can understand the surprise. Even I would be taken aback if someone I was speaking to confessed to causing a coup, Aaron replied, eliciting a laugh from Rena. So, you're only requesting that they turn the aircraft carrier around, correct? Rena asked once she had calmed herself down. Additionally, when the country announces its neutrality, ensure that they support it, masking their support as a preferable alternative to their enemy having been chosen instead of them, Aaron added. Rena, though slightly surprised that Aaron didn't push for the country to align with America, responded, if they're going to declare neutrality and not align with another country, it will be easier for me to persuade them to halt the pressure. Consider it done, she assured after understanding the direction Eden intended to take. That's good, Aaron replied, a smile spreading across his face. Is there anything else you need from me? Rena inquired. At the moment, no. However, in the coming months, I'll require your assistance a few more times, Aaron stated. With the help you have provided me, don't worry about a thing. If you need anything from me, I'll always be there to assist you to the best of my abilities, Rena responded. Sure, then talk to you later, Aaron said, bidding farewell to her. Upon receiving the reply, he ended the call. Turning to Alexander, who was visibly surprised by the swift resolution of the problem, he said, consider it solved. You can now focus on important matters concerning your country. Regarding the economic stimulus, I will provide you with more details in the coming days when you have some free time, as I need to prepare for it. That was incredibly fast, Alexander exclaimed, his surprise still evident on his face. When you're as wealthy as I am, you come to know people in influential positions, Aaron bluffed boldly, despite the fact that he didn't actually know anyone affluent or powerful apart from Rena. That's true, Alexander agreed, influenced by his perception of billionaires and their connections. A week had passed since the coup had occurred. During this time, Alexander and his newly appointed cabinet remained tight-lipped about which side they would be aligning with, stating that their utmost priority was the creation of a new constitution. They emphasized that until this critical task was completed, they would not divert their attention to any other matters. The aircraft carrier group, which had arrived a day after the coup, stayed in the country for a week but ultimately departed without any engagement, citing the absence of ongoing turmoil that warranted their prolonged presence in the country's waters. With Rena's re-emergence in the family competition and the influential individuals becoming aware of her renewed influence, her sway regained strength along with the spreading news. This newfound leverage made it effortless for her to ensure that America refrained from taking any actions against Eden. Rena also took measures to secure America's acknowledgement of the country once the process of creating the new constitution was completed. On the other hand, Aaron had been residing in the presidential palace throughout the entire week, dedicating most of his time to the universal simulation. He engaged in meetings with the think tanks that inhabited the virtual realm, utilizing their expertise and insights. Inside the universal simulation, Aaron could be observed engrossed in reading the plan devised by the think tank residing in Lab City. The objective of the plan was to assist the country in its development, enabling it to rise above the legacy of the previous regime. Aware that the government's support may not always be guaranteed, the think tank crafted the plan to also strengthen Aaron's influence within the country. The plan revolved around a simple yet impactful idea: establishing an infrastructure company. This proposed company would serve as a mechanism to exert a significant grip on the country. It would function in such a manner that, in the unlikely event that the government attempted to seize control or interfere with Aaron's interests, he could utilize the company's influence to subdue them without resorting to using his private forces. Aaron understood that deploying his private forces would inevitably lead to the downfall of the government in question. Therefore, the infrastructure company would provide a more subtle and indirect approach to safeguarding his assets and objectives. This company would undertake the construction of most of the essential infrastructure to transform the country into a desirable place to live. Not only would the company focus on delivering high-quality products, but it would also strive to make them affordable to the point where people would question whether any profit was being made. In the process of building these vital structures, Aaron would provide employment opportunities to hundreds of thousands of individuals, offering them a chance to improve their livelihoods and elevate themselves from their previous circumstances as he gained influence over them. The main project of this company involved the provision of electricity to the entire country, utilizing Lab City's nuclear fusion technology. The cost-effectiveness of the energy produced through this method was expected to be so remarkable that it would create a significant advantage for his company, solidifying its position as the only provider in the market. With an abundance of limitless and affordable energy at their disposal, the think tanks chose to plan all of the company's remaining plans to be designed to operate using electricity as the primary power source. Another ambitious project from the think tanks involved establishing a comprehensive transportation network akin to the interstate highways in America. However, instead of constructing roads, which fell under the government's purview, they chose to take inspiration from Russia's approach and plan to build a railway system spanning the entire country. By connecting it to every part of the country, it would grant Aaron unparalleled control over the transportation industry, allowing Aaron to hold a monopoly, further consolidating his influence and power. These were merely two of the significant projects outlined in the comprehensive plan for the new company. The report revealed numerous other endeavors, including water desalination and various other initiatives. As Aaron perused the document, a broad smile graced his face, and he couldn't help but feel a profound sense of satisfaction with what they had come up with. "This is an exceptional plan," Aaron remarked, placing the papers back on the table while the smile lingered upon his face. "I agree with you, sir," Nova said to Aaron, her voice laced with concern. "When they presented me with the plan, I conducted several simulations, and the results were indeed promising. However, we need to devise an explanation for the fusion reactor. If someone were to discover its existence, it could potentially lead us into a conflict with the world, similar to the bug zapper incident. But on a world scale." Aaron's smile wavered for a moment, his expression revealing his contemplation of the potential consequences. He furrowed his brow and posed a crucial question to Nova, seeking a possible solution. How long would it take to construct a single reactor? Given that we lack the manufacturing foundation for such intricate technology, even with Rena's assistance in acquiring cutting-edge machines, it would take approximately a year to complete the entire construction process, Nova responded, her tone reflecting the practicality of the situation. As he processed Nova's response, he shifted his focus to another crucial aspect and inquired, "And how is the progress on the reverse engineering of the atomic printer?" "The conventional version has been successfully completed," she began, "but implementing it in the current real world is unfeasible due to the lack of necessary technology." Nova delivered her report, outlining the progress on the reverse engineering of the atomic printer. "And what about the runic version?" he asked. "For the runic version, the progress is nearing completion, but they have encountered an obstacle in the final step," Nova reported. "What seems to be the issue?" Aaron inquired, seeing if he could find a solution. Nova proceeded to provide a detailed report on the challenge they were facing with the runic version of the atomic printer. Although they have successfully reconstructed the atomic printer by integrating runes with conventional machines, and despite incorporating runic intent during its creation, they have yet to devise an effective method for accurately manipulating the runes, she explained. With a smile on his face, he stated, "If that happens to be the sole issue, I have a solution for it. As opened the systems shop to find the remedy for the problem. Sorry for the late upload, I had to help with Eid preparations and ended up being late in completing the chapter." As he opened the shop, he searched for something that he remembered seeing during his previous search when he was searching for advanced computing technology to upgrade Nova's computer. And there it was, Runic Computer, utilizes runes as a medium for the storage and processing of information. It functions based on the principles of magic, enabling access to its capabilities through the use of runes. This unique approach allows the Runic Computer to price 2 billion SP. Upon reading the description and realizing that the price is 4 times higher than what he had previously paid for quantum computing technology, he was taken aback. Now that option is no longer viable, he said as he glanced at the amount of SP he possessed. Even though the game has been released and has amassed a significant following, I still don't have enough SP, he sighed, shaking his head in disappointment. But do I really need to purchase the entire computing technology? He pondered aloud, contemplating which specific technology would be most helpful in solving his current problem. Show me precisely where they are encountering difficulties, Aaron requested, wanting to identify the specific point at which they were stuck. By doing so, he aimed to devise an affordable solution that would enable him to overcome the problem without having to wait for his SP to accumulate to a substantial amount. Here is where they are encountering difficulties, Nova said, handing Aaron the details of the reverse engineering process. The specific part they were stuck on was highlighted in various colors to draw attention to it. Aaron began reading the report attentively, making an effort to comprehend everything to the best of his abilities. Whenever he encountered something he didn't understand, he would ask Nova to explain that particular part to him. After dedicating several hours to reading the report with unwavering focus and seeking frequent clarifications from Nova, Aaron finally succeeded in completing the entire document. Seems like all I need is to acquire the knowledge on integrating the technology with the runes, enabling their interaction and mutual control, Aaron exclaimed, a smile forming on his face. He had finally discovered a potential solution that appeared to be affordable, sparing him the need to accumulate billions of SP. Although it may not provide a complete solution, it should be sufficient for you to produce the necessary machines for the runic atomic printer. You can then utilize it to create a conventional universal printer, which will subsequently reprint itself continuously, Nova said upon hearing Aaron's plan to address the situation. That's all I need to resolve this, and once we successfully manufacture it, everything else will fall into place, Aaron stated, a smile adorning his face as he swiftly typed in what he needed from the system shop. There it is, he exclaimed, clicking on the search result to examine its details and determine if it could provide a solution to the problem they were encountering. Rune computer integration. This knowledge encompasses the fusion of runes with conventional technology. It was developed by the Elven Empire after the unification of the High Elves and Dark Elves into a single empire. The invention was necessary to facilitate seamless integration between the two races, as they employed distinct technologies. The Dark Elves utilized conventional computing technology, whereas the High Elves excelled in the mastery of runic arts. The High Elf scientist, Zerkaloran, collaborated with Thelvirandran, the Dark Elf scientist, to bring forth this groundbreaking invention, combining their expertise and knowledge to price 100 million system points. As he observed the price, the smile on his face nearly faded, but it persevered, knowing that he could afford to purchase this technology. However, acquiring it would significantly deplete his SP, leaving him with only a minimal amount remaining. Since it will also have utility in other inventions, there is no downside to me acquiring it, Aaron stated, as he proceeded to purchase the knowledge without hesitation. The system wasted no time and promptly began assimilating the knowledge into Aaron's brain. Throughout the entire process, Nova, together with Aaron, patiently waited for the system to finish the assimilation. The instant the assimilation process was complete, Aaron wasted no time and said, "Nova, it's done." Understanding the meaning behind Aaron's words, Nova promptly attempted to access his brain in order to download his brain data. As usual, a screen appeared before Aaron, seeking his permission for the attempted access to his brain data. As soon as Aaron granted his approval, Nova received access to the brain data, wasting no time in retrieving the newly acquired knowledge. After analyzing it, she transmitted the information to the minds of all the researchers in Lab City, ensuring they could incorporate it into their technological endeavors immediately. Which mineral on Earth meets the minimum requirements to be used as the medium for the integration device? Knowing that she was done, he asked. Tanzanite is the closest known material on Earth that can serve as the medium and provide sufficient effectiveness for the device to function without issues for a limited duration. Nova responded to Aaron's question, having analyzed the knowledge and simulated the required materials beforehand while showing Aaron the information about Tanzanite. If I were to attempt purchasing Tanzanite from the market myself, it would be challenging to accumulate a sufficient amount for multiple trials in creating the medium. Ask Rena to gather as much Tanzanite as she can obtain, Aaron stated after reviewing the information about Tanzanite presented by Nova. A short while later, Nova relayed the message from Ava, saying, Ava responded and mentioned that Rena will send whatever she manages to purchase within 2 weeks. Good, Aaron replied with a smile on his face, his attention shifting back to rereading the plans devised by the think tanks. January 1 Street Adolf walked calmly towards the podium in a makeshift press conference room, specifically designed to accommodate the hundreds of reporters from various corners of the world. The country's coup captured the attention of the world. However, what made this coup particularly intriguing was the ongoing speculation surrounding its execution. As time passed, increasingly peculiar discoveries emerged, making it nearly impossible for most people to shift their focus to other matters. The topic of the coup continued to dominate discussions and fuel curiosity among individuals. One of the peculiarities surrounding the coup was the international broadcast of the parade. Individuals who had posted the domestic feed realized that the rest of the world was viewing an entirely different broadcast. This discrepancy sparked lengthy debates and discussions, with people arguing over which feed was the original and which one might have been manipulated or edited. As is often the case, self-proclaimed experts emerged, attempting to discredit the domestic feed by offering their own explanations. However, their attempts were quickly debunked when genuine experts appeared, exposing the fallacy of their fabricated explanations, leaving them embarrassed and the situation more complicated than it was before. This was just one of the many attention-grabbing aspects of the coup, which not only puzzled ordinary people but also intrigued governments. Task teams were established by the government to investigate and uncover the true methods and intricacies behind the coup. As Alexander reached the podium, the flashes from the cameras taking pictures nearly doubled, causing him to squint his eyes slightly until he adjusted to the bright light. Mhhh, he cleared his throat, instantly hushing the room into silence as everyone eagerly anticipated his next words. Good morning, everyone, he began by greeting, pausing briefly before continuing his speech. As many of you are aware, today marks the day when the new Constitution of Eden will replace the old, eliminating any remnants of the previous dictatorship within our government. While it may seem contradictory that a government purportedly for the people has crafted the Constitution without direct public involvement, I assure you that the majority of its content will be subject to amendments within the next 2 years, once we have gathered and considered the input of the public. Only a select few articles will remain unamendable, carefully designed to prevent any individual with a significant following from introducing the same horrors inflicted upon our citizens by the previous regime. In the new Constitution, there are only 3 such articles that cannot be amended. Firstly, the Bill of Rights is enshrined to ensure the perpetual protection of citizens' rights. Secondly, the structure of the government is safeguarded to prevent the concentration of power. And finally, the dissolution of the military and its institutions to prevent its misuse against the people, similar to what happened in the previous regime. Having delivered this statement, he paused, allowing those watching the press conference to absorb and contemplate the information he had just shared. The expected reaction unfolded before him, evident in the expressions of the reporters in the room. They grasped the rationale behind the first 2 articles and their importance in safeguarding the rights and preventing abuse of power. However, the inclusion of the 3rd article appeared to catch them off guard, leaving them puzzled and intrigued. As the reporter eagerly raised their hand, seeking further clarification, Alexander swiftly interjected, "Questions will be entertained once I have concluded my planned remarks." His response prompted the reporter to lower their hand, acquiescing to his request and allowing him to proceed with his speech uninterrupted. Moving on to the first article, which pertains to the Bill of Rights. This section encompasses the fundamental rights and freedoms inherent to all individuals, which shall be inviolable and protected from infringement by the state or any other entity. These rights and freedoms include but are not limited to the following: freedom of speech, religion, and assembly, the right to a fair trial and due process of law, the right to privacy and protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, the right to own property and pursue happiness and prosperity, the right to engage in the political process and be represented in government, the right to access education, health care, and other essential services necessary for a decent standard of living, and the right to be free from discrimination based on race, gender, ethnicity, religion, or any other arbitrary factor. There are limitations on the exercise of rights and freedoms, which are defined by law and outlined in this Constitution. These limitations aim to protect the rights and freedoms of others and uphold the public welfare. No individual shall be permitted to misuse their rights and freedoms to cause harm to others or to disturb the peace and stability of society. Alexander paused to catch his breath after reading through the extensive list of rights and freedoms, allowing a moment of silence to let the audience process the information he had just conveyed. As for the second article, which pertains to the structure of the government, it focuses on the principle of separation of powers. The powers of the government shall be divided among four distinct branches: the legislative, the executive, the judiciary, and the oversight. The legislative power will be entrusted to a unicameral parliament, whose members will be elected by the people through free and fair elections. The parliament will be empowered to enact laws, impose taxes, and approve the national budget. The executive power will be held by a president, who will be elected by the people through free and fair elections and serve a single term of 8 years. The president will serve as the head of state and government, responsible for executing the laws of the country and ensuring the well-being of the public. The judicial power will be entrusted to a system of courts, with judges appointed by the president upon the advice and consent of the parliament. These courts will have the authority to interpret the laws, settle conflicts between individuals and organizations, and uphold justice within the country's legal framework. The oversight branch, as its name suggests, will have the task of evaluating the laws and policies enacted by the government. Its role is to ensure that these laws and policies align with the current and future-oriented objectives of the country. By conducting thorough assessments, the oversight branch will contribute to maintaining a balanced and effective governance system. As for the third article concerning the dissolution of the military and its institutions, it is crucial to address the issue of national security. With the abolition of the military, we recognize the need for an alternative mechanism to safeguard our nation's rights and prevent any exploitation. After an extensive and confidential evaluation process, we have made the decision to entrust this responsibility to Ares. Alexander's statement left the audience intrigued about the details surrounding this arrangement, as he moved on with his speech without providing further information. His speech continued for over half an hour, delving into the plans he had for the country and outlining the path they would be taking as a nation moving forward. He discussed various aspects, including economic reforms, infrastructure development, education, healthcare, and social welfare. "Now, I will be taking your questions," Alexander announced, prompting a flurry of raised hands from the reporters in the room. After pointing to a reporter, Alexander nodded and gestured for her to speak. The reporter quickly introduced herself and wasted no time in getting to the question. "I think many people are wondering what or who is Ares, since you just mentioned the name. Could you provide some more information about it?" she inquired with curiosity in her voice. "More details will be released when everything about them is completed and they are ready. The secrecy is necessary for national security reasons," Alexander responded, his smile unwavering. "I understand that citizens may be curious, but I kindly ask for their patience in this matter. Rest assured, transparency will be maintained as much as possible, and updates will be provided at the appropriate time." Another reporter, who introduced himself as a CNN correspondent, asked, "What was the reason behind your decision to establish a single 8-year term for the president?" We opted for a single 8-year term because our evaluation of presidents in numerous developed countries revealed a pattern where many of them prioritize short-term gains to secure their chances of re-election, often at the expense of the country's long-term interests. The 8-year duration allows the president ample time to formulate and execute long-term plans for the nation, ensuring they can see them through completion within a single term. This approach helps us avoid the pitfalls observed in countries with shorter presidential terms, elaborated Alexander, shedding more light on the rationale behind their decision. Could you explain the rationale behind your decision to introduce a new branch of government? Additionally, could you clarify the responsibilities this new branch will undertake? Al Jazeera's reporter inquired. This branch will have the responsibility of ensuring that the country does not pursue short-term development initiatives that could potentially harm its citizens in the long run, Alexander replied, swiftly moving on to another reporter's question. When is the first election in the country scheduled to take place? A Russia-1 reporter inquired. We have not yet made a final decision on the exact date, but we anticipate that the first election will take place within the next year or two. It is essential for us to allocate sufficient time to ensure that every elected position contributes meaningfully to the nation's welfare and is not merely a means to squander taxpayers' money, he answered. A Fox News reporter asked, what will happen to Adolf? He will be subjected to a fair trial, just like any other citizen of the country, and will receive the same punishment that any citizen who has committed a similar crime would receive, Alexander answered. What will happen to those who were falsely accused and imprisoned by the previous government? An NHK reporter asked. They have the option to apply for the reopening of their cases. If it is determined that they were falsely accused, they will be released from prison and provided with compensation for the wrongful time they spent incarcerated, as a means to compensate for the time they lost, he answered and continued choosing another reporter for them to ask their questions. There are international speculations suggesting that certain countries have offered various types of support, including financial assistance, in exchange for the allocation of islands to establish military bases to benefit from your country's positioning. Is there any truth to these speculations, and if so, have you made a decision regarding which country you will be choosing? A China Central Television reporter asked. Although the allegations are true, we have made the decision to maintain neutrality and refrain from choosing any country. Our aim is to prevent the escalation of tensions in the world, Alexander replied. The press conference continued for over an hour, covering a wide range of topics as the reporters utilized this opportunity to address the pressing questions to the new government. It served as a significant platform for obtaining detailed information, as prior to this conference, the government had only made announcements without providing further elaboration or details. The reporters made the most of this occasion to inquire about various aspects concerning the functioning and policies of the newly established government. He is truly adept at public speaking, Aaron remarked, observing the press conference where Alexander answered each question with professionalism and poise. Nova responded to Aaron's statement, saying, if Alexander had indeed memorized the documents I provided him, it's no surprise that someone skilled at public speaking would have no trouble appearing as a proficient speaker. And how is the public reacting? He asked, disregarding her attempt at humble bragging. Nova summarized the public and international watchers' reactions to the press conference for Aaron, stating, while it is generally positive, many individuals are still curious about the identity of Ares and why they were chosen for outsourcing over well-known mercenaries like Blackwater and others who have established their combat prowess. Some people are focusing their attention on gathering more information about the fourth government branch and searching for similar models implemented by other nations. However, the prevailing impression is that Alexander is dedicated to building a nation that prioritizes long-term planning, instead of pursuing short-term gains to impress the public, which could ultimately harm the country in the long run and jeopardize chances of the nation's future development. Looks like everything went according to plan. It's time I returned to my attempt at making of the medium, Aaron said as he immediately logged off and returned to continue his attempt at making the medium for the Rune computer integration module. 3 weeks before the press conference, Aaron could be seen in his usual position, laying on the bed with the headgear securely on his head. However, something was different today. He was sound asleep, both in the real world and the universal simulation he was currently logged in, which was a rare occurrence. Inside the universal simulation, Nova calmly observed Aaron peacefully sleeping. It was a forced sleep, designed to prevent any mishaps from happening while Aaron underwent the process of knowledge assimilation. Unlike previous instances, this time Aaron was receiving knowledge directly from his headset, which was the first time, rather than it being done by his system. Even though Nova had conducted numerous tests that indicated there was no necessity to put Aaron to sleep, she decided to err on the side of caution due to her not possessing complete and fully accurate data about the condition of the VR headgear and wanted to eliminate any chances of potential problems. As an additional precautionary measure, the door leading to the room he was in was heavily secured, prepared to ward off any potential interruptions that could arise and disrupt Aaron's assimilation process. 4 real-time hours later. "Ah, my head," Aaron groaned as Nova gently woke him up, instinctively reaching for his forehead, groaning in discomfort caused by the throbbing headache he was experiencing. "It will pass shortly," Nova assured him, her voice comforting, as she gently massaged his forehead. Utilizing her control and authority within the universal simulation, she gradually diminished the pain, allowing Aaron to slowly relax. "Huh, what is this?" Aaron curiously asked, finally realizing that the system's blue screen was displayed right in front of him. "Ah," Aaron exclaimed, as the realization dawned upon him. It was the customary reward he received for utilizing the system's knowledge, and this time he had been granted one for successfully assimilating the knowledge of atomic printers into his mind using the assimilation technique. After taking a few moments to calm himself down, he spoke up, saying, "Materialize the materials I require for trials since I need to make it completely assimilate into my brain." Talking about the well-known weakness of knowledge assimilation when it is conducted in a device that was not specifically designed for such purposes. As usual, Nova materialized all the necessary materials, ensuring that this time all the machines Aaron would be using for trials were of the same generation accessible for him in the real world, wanting to provide a seamless experience and replicate the conditions he would encounter outside the simulation. Over the next 3 weeks, Aaron diligently conducted his trials, aiming to ensure a flawless production when he eventually started the production of the machine in the real world. He faced many failures in the beginning, but with perseverance, he achieved a few successes, allowing him to gain the confidence to carry out the process in the real world. Coincidentally, this newfound assurance coincided with Alexander's press conference to the world. Back to today. After logging out, Aaron swiftly departed from the room and headed straight towards one of the renovated warehouses located in the temporary base of Ares. This facility had been utilized by his private forces as they made preparations for the coup, but soon they will be moving out and only use it as an emergency weapons warehouse. A considerable amount of time had passed since Aaron left the presidential palace, as it was no longer suitable for him to reside there. Instead, he relocated to the current location, where they had ample space for the delivery and storage of the large machines he required for his endeavors. As Aaron swung open the gate to the warehouse, he couldn't contain his amazement and exclaimed, "Wow!" when he laid eyes on the array of machines nestled within. Although Aaron had witnessed their arrival, the machines had remained concealed beneath their covers. Due to his intense focus on practicing the assimilated knowledge, he hadn't found the time to inspect them closely. Thus, as he stood there, it marked the first occasion he beheld the machines after they had been unveiled, assembled, and patiently awaited his utilization of them. "Having a president on your side certainly makes things easier," Aaron remarked, recalling how effortlessly he acquired ownership of the manufacturing machines. The government had seized these machines, which were controlled by companies under Adolf's influence, enabling Aaron to obtain them for his own purposes. "You could have used Rena to get your hands on the latest generation of the same machines," Nova jokingly complained, playfully talking about the alternative approach. "It would take too long for the new generation of these machines to arrive," Aaron explained. Additionally, despite the government being taken over and many countries lifting their sanctions against Eden, America still maintains its sanctions. They claim that they are waiting for the Constitution of Eden to be revealed before making their decision. So, instead of wasting time waiting for new machines that would have to be smuggled out of America, these existing machines can fulfill our immediate requirements," Aaron said as he powered on the machines, preparing to commence his work. Indeed, with Alexander's announcement that Eden will remain neutral and not take sides, and Rena's promise for America's acknowledgement of the new government, the sanctions have no choice but to be dropped, Nova replied, reminding Aaron of Rena's promise. "Yeah, I know. Time to get to work, Aaron said, wasting no time as he began preparing the CNC machines for manufacturing. He started by carefully selecting the appropriate cutting tools, fixtures, and work-holding devices necessary for machining the aluminum blocks that are going to be turned into the parts of the printer. Simultaneously, Nova began calibrating the machines and programming them with the specific instructions required to accomplish the tasks at hand. Once the machines were properly calibrated, Aaron proceeded to load the aluminum blocks onto the work table of each CNC machine. Immediately after he completed loading them, guided by the programmed instructions, the CNC machines commenced their precise work of cutting, milling, and drilling the aluminum blocks, embarking on a journey to create intricate features and achieve the desired precise dimensions according to Nova's design. Observing the machines diligently carrying out their tasks, Aaron stood and watched for a minute, observing how the 4 CNC machines were seamlessly executing their respective works. Aware that the machining of the aluminum blocks would require several hours, Aaron decided to utilize this time to fabricate the medium necessary for the computer to manipulate the runes. "Let's begin with the production of the integration module," Aaron stated as he carried the crate that was covered in a clean sheet from the corner of the room and placed it on the table, before carefully opening it, revealing its contents. Upon seeing what was inside, Aaron said, "Although I anticipated her exceeding my expectations in terms of quantity, she truly went above and beyond and exceeded my expectations of her exceeding my expectations." He was taken aback by the significant amount of tanzanite that Rena had collected within just 2 weeks and sent to him. Nova, observing the amount through the cameras in the room, added, "It is enough for you to create at least 3 mediums as a redundancy in case one of them fails during production. As they say, you can't be too careful," Aaron remarked as started working on the integration medium.